The moment you tell someone you've saved $100,000, you have permanently changed the price of every single thing in your relationship with that person. Not in a vague, metaphorical sense, in a real, measurable, behavioral sense. You've moved an invisible line inside their head, and inside yours, about what's fair to expect, what's normal to spend, and who should be picking up the check at dinner. And here's the part that is actually going to cost you money. The bigger the number you reveal, the more expensive that revelation becomes. Not because people will steal from you, but because you will change. Your spending changes, your behavior changes, your identity changes. And most people don't feel it happening until they look at their portfolio a decade later and wonder where the compounding went. This video is about the mechanics of that disappearing act. Why financial silence is a real wealth strategy and not just a personality quirk. And specifically how to think about it if you're anywhere in the range of $50,000 to a few $100,000 in saved assets and trying to protect the exact conditions that allowed you to build it in the first place. A quick word about what this video is not. This is not about hiding money from your spouse, not about lying to your accountant or your attorney, not about some paranoid conspiracy theory about people coming for your savings. That's a different, much dumber video. This is about the quiet, well-documented, behaviorally predictable mechanisms by which financial visibility destroys financial growth. Mechanisms backed by research, quantifiable in real dollars, and almost perfectly repeatable once you understand the psychology driving them. My name is Andy, and on Andy Explains Money, I spend way too much time thinking about the invisible forces that quietly drain the portfolios of people who are doing almost everything right. Today, I'm going to show you the exact dollar cost of letting people know your number, introduce you to someone whose financial position got exposed at the worst possible moment, and walk you through a framework for protecting the one asset that almost nobody in personal finance talks about, your financial silence. By the end of this video, you're going to understand why the biggest threat to your wealth isn't a bad investment or a market crash. It's a single sentence at a dinner table that you can never take back. I want you to hold one image in your mind for this entire video, because it explains things that spreadsheets alone cannot touch. There's an old saying in the submarine corps, going back to at least World War II. The idea is simple. A submarine is most effective and most survivable when nobody knows where it is. It does its best work in the dark, under pressure, invisible to everything on the surface. The moment it surfaces, the moment it makes a sound that registers on someone's sonar, it becomes a target. Everything that made it powerful, the stealth, the freedom of movement, the ability to operate on its own terms, evaporates instantly. Your wealth is a submarine. It compounds in the dark. It builds options you don't have to explain to anyone. It creates freedom precisely because it's invisible. And the moment you let the wrong people see the blip on the radar, everything gets harder, more expensive, and significantly less free. I'm going to come back to that image throughout this video, because it's the most accurate metaphor I've ever found for how wealth actually works in a social environment. Let me start with a number that should stop you cold, because it sets the stage for everything that follows. According to a 2023 Charles Schwab survey, 61% of Americans report living paycheck to paycheck. Now hold on before you dismiss that as a wages problem or a cost of living problem. Because according to a Lending Club report from the same year, 36% of people earning over $100,000 a year also report living paycheck to paycheck. 1 in 3 six-figure earners cannot absorb a single month of lost income. That is not a math problem. That is not a wages problem. That is a visibility problem. They reached a certain income level. They let the people around them see it, and then they had to maintain it. The conventional term for this is lifestyle creep, but I've always thought that name was misleading. Creep implies something slow, subtle, barely noticeable. What's actually happening is more mechanical than that. Think of it as a ratchet. Every time you make a visible financial upgrade, the new car, the nicer apartment, the restaurant where the appetizers cost $28, you click the ratchet one notch forward. And here is what a ratchet does that a dial doesn't. It only goes in one direction. You can escalate. You cannot de-escalate without friction, without someone noticing, without a conversation you didn't plan on having. Think about what that means structurally. You have set a floor, and that floor is not enforced by your budget. It's enforced by the people who watched you set it. The dinner where you grabbed the check for the table, the vacation you posted, the watch someone noticed on your wrist, the apartment your friends have been inside. Every single one of those moments is a small, informal social contract. This is who I am now. This is my level. And contracts have enforcement mechanisms. Yours will too. You just won't see them until you try to renegotiate. Let me tell you about a guy I'll call Derek. Derek is a mid-level software engineer at a tech firm in Austin. Makes about $140,000 a year. Around 2019, he gets serious about his finances, maxes his 401k, builds a real 6-month emergency fund, starts moving money into index funds every month. Nothing fancy, boring, consistent, compound interest maximizing behavior. He's doing it exactly right. And then he makes one mistake. He tells his college friends. Not obnoxiously, he's genuinely excited. He's the first person in his family to make real income. He never had money growing up. He's proud of what he's built. At a birthday dinner, after a couple of beers, he mentions he just crossed $100,000 in investments. One sentence, one number. Watch what happens over the next 2 years. The friend group starts gravitating towards slightly nicer restaurants. Not every time, but consistently enough. And Derek, who now carries the social label of the guy who's crushing it financially, never pushes back. Because pushing back feels wrong when you've publicly announced you have money. His girlfriend starts having different conversations about apartments. Not demanding, just different. The frame has shifted. When his parents need help with a car repair, they call Derek instead of his brother. He pays it. He's the money guy now. His submarine surfaced. By 2022, Derek's net worth has barely moved, despite 3 years of strong income and disciplined savings behavior. Not because anyone robbed him, because the identity he publicly created required maintenance fees that didn't show up on any invoice. They were in the air, in every spending decision, in the background of every conversation about where to eat, where to stay, who should handle this, who should cover that. Here's the reversal I want you to sit with. You think the problem is that people will ask you for money. That's real, and it happens. But that is the smaller problem. The deeper problem, the one that costs dramatically more over a lifetime, is that you will give money without being asked, because the identity you've publicly built makes generosity the path of least resistance every single time. Not because you're weak, because you're responding to social incentives exactly the way a rational human being responds when they've created a situation that punishes saying no. Derek isn't undisciplined. Derek handed the people around him a lever that moves his money, and they don't even know they're pulling it. There's research from behavioral economist Richard Thaler, Nobel Prize winner 2017, on what he calls mental accounting. The idea is that we don't treat money as purely interchangeable. We assign it to invisible psychological categories. And one of those categories, for anyone who has publicly established a financial identity, is the maintenance cost of being who I said I am. That cost doesn't appear in any budget. It appears in your behavior, and it compounds over time with the same patience as a bad interest rate. Now here's something that goes even deeper than social pressure, something your own brain is doing to you, and this is genuinely weirder than anything Derek's friends did. There's a body of behavioral economics research. The most relevant work comes from Princeton and the University of Chicago, looking at what they call identity-consistent spending. The core finding is this: once you publicly identify as someone at a certain financial level, your subconscious starts protecting that identity. Not because you're vain, because that's what human brains do. We maintain cognitive consistency. We behave in ways that match the self-image we've broadcast. And this happens well below the level of conscious decision-making. Here's what it looks like in practice. You mentioned your investments to a coworker. Maybe you told someone you're good with money. You've visibly spent at a certain level for long enough that your professional reputation calibrated to it. Now, without realizing it, you start filtering every spending decision through a new lens. Does this choice match who I said I am? Ordering the budget option when a colleague is watching feels inconsistent with the image. Saying you're sitting out a work trip for financial reasons feels inconsistent. Driving a car that's visibly below the one your social circle has mentally assigned to you feels inconsistent. None of this is conscious calculation. All of it costs money. The submarine doesn't just protect you from other people's radar. It protects you from your own. Let me make this concrete with a number, because the number is the thing that should terrify you into silence. Say you're 35 years old. You've saved $200,000 across your 401k and a taxable brokerage account. You've been moderately visible about doing well. Not bragging, but it's not a secret. Conservative estimate. Identity-consistent spending costs you an extra $400 per month. And I want to be very clear. $400 is conservative. I'm including the round of drinks you bought because it felt right. The hotel upgrade on the group trip you didn't fight. The dinner you didn't bother arguing about splitting evenly. The loan to a friend that never came back. The family situation you were the one who handled. $400 a month, over 30 years, invested at 7% average annual return, is $582,000 in compounding you did not receive. Not from a bad investment decision, not from a market crash, from telling people. And that is the conservative number. In high-cost cities, in professional environments where status carries real weight, in social circles where income is higher, identity-consistent spending isn't $400 a month. It's $800. It's $1,200. The compounding math does not care about your intentions. By the way, if this is landing for you, hit subscribe. The algorithm doesn't push videos that challenge how people think about money unless viewers actively tell it to. Now I want to introduce you to Marcus, because his story is close to a perfect illustration of what happens when the submarine surfaces at the worst possible moment. Marcus is a top producer at his company, consistent earner, somewhere between $90,000 and $120,000 for most of his career. Good with money in the boring, unglamorous way that actually works. Maxes his Roth IRA every year starting in his early 30s. Drives a used Honda Accord. Not because he can't afford something better, but because he genuinely doesn't care what his car communicates to the world. Bought a house well below what the bank approved him for. By his mid-40s, Marcus has roughly $450,000 in invested assets. Not a millionaire, but heading there with real momentum. And here's the key detail about Marcus. Almost nobody knows. His friends think he's comfortable. His family thinks he's responsible. His colleagues assume he's doing okay. Nobody has a number. His submarine is completely submerged, deep, silent, compounding quietly in the dark. Then his father dies, and in settling the estate, finances have to be disclosed among the siblings. Suddenly, Marcus's number is visible to his 3 brothers and sisters. Not because he chose to reveal it, because legal and financial processes required transparency. I'll come back to what happened next because it's textbook. But first, I need to explain the mechanism that makes everything Marcus experienced both predictable and almost impossible to resist once it starts. It's called the Diderot effect, and it has been documented in academic literature since 1772, but it almost never comes up in personal finance content. Denis Diderot was an 18th-century French philosopher. He edited the first modern encyclopedia. He was one of the primary intellectual architects of the Enlightenment. He was also, for essentially his entire adult life, broke. In 1765, Catherine the Great of Russia, an admirer of his work, purchased his personal library for 15,000 livres, significant money at the time. Diderot had a windfall, and the first thing he bought was a robe, a beautiful, luxurious scarlet dressing gown, the finest garment he had ever owned. And then something strange started happening. His apartment looked wrong. The robe was too magnificent for the furniture around it. He needed a new writing desk, one that matched the robe's quality. The new desk made the curtains look dated. New curtains made the rug look threadbare. The new rug made the wall art look cheap. New art revealed the sculptures were embarrassing. Within a single year, Diderot had completely refurnished his entire apartment and was nearly destitute again, despite starting with a windfall he had never expected to have. He wrote about it in a melancholy, self-aware essay called "Regrets on Parting with My Old Dressing Gown." His observation was that the robe had an imperious air, which made everything else look out of place. Diderot understood the mechanism perfectly. He described it with precision, and then he kept doing it anyway, because that's how powerful the pull is. Here's what the Diderot effect has to do with financial silence. The effect doesn't require you to spend recklessly. It requires you to become visible at a new level. Once people can see your robe, your new car, your renovation, the vacation you posted, the restaurant you apparently frequent now, they recalibrate everything else they know about you against that new baseline. And you feel the pressure to maintain consistency across the entire picture. One upgrade expands the surface area of your life that needs to be maintained. A nice car requires nice-looking everything around the car. A nice apartment requires nice-looking everything inside the apartment. Each step up doesn't cost what it costs. It costs the entire ecosystem that has to be rebuilt around it. A 2014 study in the Journal of Consumer Psychology found that people who made one visible luxury purchase were 47% more likely to make a second, unrelated luxury purchase within 30 days. Not because they suddenly had more money, because the first purchase changed their spending identity, and the second was an attempt to make the visible picture consistent. This is the compounding ratchet. Every click creates a new reference point. Every reference point generates new inconsistencies. Every inconsistency creates new spending pressure, and it never reverses on its own. Now I know what's in the comments already. Come on, Andy, I worked for this. I deserve nice things. Yes, completely, 100%. And here's what I actually want for you. I want you to buy exactly the things that make your real, private life genuinely better. I want you to spend on what actually moves the needle for your quality of life in ways you experience, not in ways other people observe. What I don't want, and what the data says will cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars, is spending as signal. Spending to update other people's mental model of your position. Spending to maintain an image you accidentally created by surfacing the submarine. There is a massive difference between buying a nice car because you genuinely love cars and a car brings you authentic daily pleasure, and buying a nice car because your financial reputation now requires a vehicle that matches it. One of those is a legitimate personal value. The other is Diderot's robe. And the uncomfortable truth is that most people, if they're being brutally honest, are doing a mix of both. The trick to keeping more of your money is being ruthlessly precise about which is which. Run silent. Run deep. The submarine doesn't redecorate its hull so passing ships can admire it. Now let's go back to Marcus. After the estate process, his siblings had a number: $450,000. And here's what started happening. Not through conspiracy, not through malice, just through incentives behaving exactly the way incentives do. One sibling was going through a financial rough patch. The ask didn't come directly to Marcus. It moved through the family, through the kind of indirect third-party communication that is somehow harder to refuse than a direct request. Marcus helped. Then a cousin who'd heard the number through the estate paperwork reached out with what was transparently a request for capital dressed up as a business opportunity conversation. Marcus's mother, now a widow dealing with new expenses, started assuming Marcus would handle certain costs because, and this is a direct quote, "You're the one who's set up." Not demanding, assuming, which is somehow more difficult to push back against than a demand. Within 18 months, Marcus had dispersed approximately $65,000 in direct and indirect financial assistance. Some of it he genuinely wanted to give. Some of it he felt unable to refuse without a family conversation he didn't have the energy for. And $65,000, kept invested at 7% annual return for 20 years, is worth approximately $251,000. $250,000. Not gone because Marcus was irresponsible. Gone because his number was visible. The submarine surfaced, and submarines that surface become targets, not always out of malice, but targets nonetheless. Now here's what financial silence actually buys you, and this is the part that doesn't get enough airtime because it's not dramatic enough to go viral. Optionality, the ability to choose. Not in investment decisions specifically, in life decisions, career decisions, in any situation where money is a factor and you are the one who privately controls it. Think about what money actually is. People say it's freedom, which is true but vague. More specifically, it is negotiating power. In every transaction, formal or informal, financial or social, The person with the most options and the least visible need has the leverage. That is true in a salary negotiation, in a business deal, in a conversation about splitting a check, in a decision about whether to take a risk on something that matters to you. The person who needs the outcome least has the power. Now consider what financial visibility does to that leverage. The moment the people around you have a rough sense of your number, they know your floor. They know what you can absorb. They know what "I can't afford that" sounds like when it comes from you, which is to say, it sounds false. And when it sounds false, you start saying yes to things that cost you money, because yes costs dollars and no costs credibility. And you've publicly established that you can afford the dollars. Let me show you the compound cost with a mini case study. Two men, both 35, both engineers in mid-sized American cities. Kevin earns $115,000 a year, has about $180,000 saved. He's proud of it, reasonably so, and it's not a secret. His colleagues know he's good with money. His friends know he's doing well. Over the next 15 years, the social ratchet does its work. Identity-consistent spending, Diderot cascades, occasional family support. The cumulative cost of being the guy who's doing well runs Kevin approximately $500 a month in above-baseline spending. Over 15 years, that's $90,000 in direct spending and $147,000 in compounding he did not receive. Total cost, roughly $237,000. James earns $110,000, $5,000 less per year, has about $170,000 saved, slightly less on paper, but he tells essentially nobody. His friends think he's responsible. His family thinks he's doing okay. His colleagues have no idea. He drives a car that's perfectly nice and perfectly forgettable. He doesn't post vacations. He doesn't mention numbers. His above-baseline social visibility spending is maybe $60 to $80 a month. Choices that feel right to him personally, not socially required by an identity he's obligated to maintain. At 50 years old, Kevin's net worth sits at approximately $820,000. Solid. Genuinely good. James's net worth is approximately $1.1 million. Same city, roughly similar income, similar discipline. $300,000 separating them. Not from smarter investing, not from higher income, not from a lucky break, from visibility. Kevin surfaced. James didn't. And here's the part of James's story I want you to sit with. At 50, James gets a call about a position at a startup. Half his current salary. Equity that may or may not be worth something. Work he actually finds meaningful. Kevin cannot take that call. He has a lifestyle floor that requires his income. He has people around him calibrated to a standard. He has implicit financial commitments, not contractual, not formal, but absolutely real, that depend on him maintaining his earning level. James takes the meeting, does the math in private, looks at his submarine, quiet, deep, fully operational, and says yes. Because nobody knows what he's built, because his optionality is intact, because the submarine never surfaced. That is what financial silence actually buys you. Not the absence of spending, not austerity, not deprivation. The preservation of the ability to say yes when it matters and no when it doesn't, on your terms, in private, without a negotiation you didn't ask for. Run silent, run deep. Here are the 3 things that actually matter coming out of this video. Not spend less, not make a budget. These are specific to the silence strategy. First, audit your financial visibility. Not your spending, your visibility. Think through the last 12 months. What have you said, posted, mentioned, or implied about your financial position to the people in your regular life? What does your lifestyle signal about your income to someone observing you from the outside? What number would a reasonable person assign to you based on what they've seen? If the answer is pretty accurate, or they have a rough idea, you've surfaced. The immediate work is to stop adding data points. No more updates. No more visible upgrades that recalibrate people's sense of your position. You can't undo what's already visible, but you can stop making the picture clearer. Let the submarine begin its descent. It takes longer than surfacing, but it works. Second, decouple your financial milestones from your social identity. This is genuinely difficult because it cuts against something that feels earned. When you hit $100,000 for the first time, when you cross $250,000, When you hit $500,000, the instinct is to tell someone. It feels like an achievement that deserves acknowledgement, and it is. But here's the problem. The people best positioned to celebrate with you are the people who already have context on your finances, which means they already have the lever. Celebrate in private. Tell your partner. Write it down somewhere. Do whatever makes it real and acknowledged for you, without making it a data point for anyone else's mental model of your wealth. The milestone is not less real because you didn't announce it. The compounding is not less real. The only thing missing is the social recognition. And the social recognition is what costs you. Third, and this is the one I think changes how you operate permanently, build what I call the invisible floor. A liquid, accessible reserve that exists entirely outside of anyone else's awareness or expectation. Not your emergency fund. People can know that exists in abstract terms. This is different. This is the number you know and nobody else does. The number that means you could absorb any social pressure, any unexpected ask, any sudden opportunity, without flinching, without negotiating, and without anyone else having a vote. The person sitting at a dinner table who knows they could pick up the entire check for everyone at the table, but orders from the middle of the menu and says nothing. That is not cheapness. That is not insecurity. That is a submarine that knows exactly where it is and chooses not to ping. The optionality in that moment is worth more than the check, and the only way to have it is to be the only person in the room who knows the number. Now here is Marcus's second act. After 18 months of watching his financial position drain through the slow leak of family expectation, Marcus did something I think was exactly right. He worked with an estate attorney and a financial planner to restructure how his assets were held, in ways that made the visible numbers significantly harder for anyone to read. Not to hide from taxes, not to do anything remotely problematic, purely to reduce legibility, to rebuild acoustic silence. He also stopped discussing family financial matters in group settings. He routed those conversations through his attorney when they came up. Not coldly. He still helped. He still contributed where he genuinely chose to, but on his terms, at amounts he decided, without a shared ledger anyone could reference going forward. The last time I checked in on Marcus, he was 51. His net worth was north of $700,000. Still not a millionaire, but growing again. Quietly compounding in the dark, the way it works best. Every system in the modern consumer economy is designed to make your wealth visible. Credit card rewards programs exist to get you spending and signaling. The luxury goods industry is built on the economic value of status display. Social media is, at its core, a wealth visibility machine. A platform engineered to make you broadcast your consumption so algorithms can monetize your aspirations. The entire advertising industry is built on creating a gap between your current visible status and a slightly better version you could buy your way into. These are not neutral systems. They are incentive machines with enormous budgets pointed directly at your psychology. The fact that keeping wealth private feels slightly awkward, slightly antisocial, slightly uncomfortable, that feeling was built. It didn't emerge organically. It emerged from aligned economic incentives that profit from your visibility. Not a conspiracy. Nobody planned it in a room, but the effect is real, and once you understand it, the discomfort of staying quiet stops being a signal to change course and starts being a signal that you're doing it right. There is a concept in naval engineering called the acoustic signature, the noise profile that makes a submarine detectable. Modern submarine design is almost entirely focused on reducing the acoustic signature. Not speed, not firepower, quietness. Because quiet is survivability. Quiet is mission completion. Quiet is the competitive advantage that everything else depends on. Your financial acoustic signature, what you broadcast, what you signal, what you let the people around you calibrate against, that's what you're managing when you practice financial silence. Not the money itself, the signal the money sends. And in a world where everyone is broadcasting everything, where every platform is optimized to make you louder and more visible, running silent isn't just a strategy. It's an edge. I'll see you in the next one.